We have the living area that I just walked out of. We have an open kitchen concept here. As I said earlier, my cleaner is here. She's in the midst of flipping the property. This room looks like it's ready. The beds are made up. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property. This room, she's still working on. She's got to come back and put the sheets back on and finish her final touch-up cleaning. We have a nice, large walk-in closet here, large bathroom, shower, double shower heads, and that type of thing. Welcome to the Property Power Play. I'm your host, Kito J Johnson, and it is right here that we empower you with the tools necessary to play the game of real estate and to win. I'm so excited today because I have my friend all the way from Houston, Texas here with us, Kierra Castleberry. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I really want to give you a hug, but I don't know if I'm gonna mess up the shot and all that kind of stuff, but appreciate you being here so much. So we're gonna talk about short-term rentals, and Airbnb and all of those wonderful things that come with it. But I first want to talk about how I first found you on Clubhouse, and I stumbled into a room where you were speaking, and you absolutely blew my mind with the content you were providing, and I hired you as my coach to evaluate my listings, and the things that you put in place for me absolutely changed the trajectory of my personal short-term rental journey. And I'll say this right up front, anything that I've ever been involved with that you have done, you always over-deliver. And so thank you for just being the person that you are to so many people. So,
sorry, it's hard for me to take compliments. I'm like, ooh, but thanks.
So from your perspective, tell us who you are.
My name is Kierra Castleberry. I go by Kierra Castle on the internet street. No, I go by Coach for the Host on the streets.
Yes.
I am an accountant by trade. Started with 2 Big 4 accounting firms and realized I didn't want to do accounting no more and didn't like the environment. And I really liked real estate when I got into it. I got started with just renting apartments from landlords and then listing those apartments on Airbnb with their permission. Mm-hmm. And if I hadn't gotten started with that, I would not be here today in this chair. So that's me.
Tell me just a little bit about Kierra, the accountant, before your entrepreneurial journey. How long did you do that? How long were you an accountant?
Oh, wow. So I didn't do it for long.
Okay.
I think I quit right after the second one, not long. So to give you an idea, because I was doing so well with the Airbnbs and stuff, I was like, why don't I just do this Airbnb thing, get more units, and then be good to go? And then that's exactly what we did. And to this day, we have our units, you know, that produce the cash flow and allow us to invest in a lot of things. And yeah, that's kind of who I am as an accountant. I do use accounting in a lot of the things I do today, though. A lot of the things I learned in accounting, we do today. Yeah. Yep, everything.
So how did you find short-term rentals? Why short-term rentals? And let's start with defining that. What is short-term rentals? Because oftentimes we say Airbnb, but that's just a brand, right? So let's talk about that.
So short-term rentals, if I were to define it, it's basically when you rent out your properties on a short-term basis. So usually less than 30 days. I mean, you have mid-term rentals that are getting popular now, which is when you rent for like maybe 2-3 months, sometimes even 6. But it's not your traditional, like you don't have a traditional lease, like a 1-year lease. So short-term rentals is very it has like a lot of turnover, like high turnover and stuff like that. So that's kind of what short-term rentals are.
Out of all real estate investment strategies, why short-term rentals?
To be honest, I had one of my mentors, she lives in Atlanta and she has a few condos here and that are short-term rentals. And during the Atlanta Super Bowl, she made a ton of money. And I was like, girl, she was posting like her screenshots of her back. And I'm like, can you teach me? So she taught me, she was like, yeah, all you have to do is, if you don't want to buy property now, you can like find a landlord and you rent the property out from the landlord. And I was like, girl, that sounds illegal. But I did my own research and realized you have the permission from your landlord to do it. Gotcha. So then I don't know what it was. It was just one of those things where I felt like I could really do it. I was like, okay, I could figure out the design. I could figure out, it was just very process-based, and I'm an accountant, so I'm very process-based. And yeah, I just went through the process, started, and loved it.
So where's your concentration? Like, is everything in Houston now? Or you have where's your focus?
Yeah, so I started off in like the Norfolk, Virginia area, Norfolk/Virginia Beach area, and we did do really well because it is a military city. But once my husband got out the military, he realized he wanted to go back to Houston, which is my home. So we went back to Houston, and we picked up like 2 months after we got there and we started up the short-term rentals again in Houston. So that's my main focus right now. And we mostly do arbitrage at the moment. We did purchase a property and did Airbnb, short-term rentals with it. And that was fun because it was a project. It was like a complete tear down.
That's the house I saw, right?
Yeah. Chestnut. It's my baby.
So let's talk about the properties that you place on the platform, because you've mentioned arbitrage a little bit, and we'll go into some more detail about that. But you also mentioned the renovation, the house that you own. So what are some strategies to acquire property to get started?
There are a few, but I would say the most popular ones that are the easiest to understand for most people are co-hosting, which is where, let's say you have an Airbnb and you don't want to rent it anymore, a short-term rental. I'll come and say, hey, I can rent it for you. You just give me a percentage and you can do whatever you want to do. And it's also known as property management. They're one and the same, sort of. The benefit about co-hosting is there's like little to no investment up front. If anything, you're paying to have like a specific property management system that you're using, but usually there's no cost up front. Then you have arbitrage, and with arbitrage, you're renting from a landlord, and you do have to furnish it yourself. You're in charge of the rent, the bills, all the things. And then finally, ownership is probably the one that's the hardest to get into, but it's the most fun and rewarding. But with ownership, you just buy the property, make sure there's no HOAs, and then do your own thing and list it on the short-term rental platforms.
One of the things that I appreciate about short-term rentals is, and before this strategy, like when somebody wants to get involved with real estate and real estate investing, we oftentimes ask, what's your time, your money, your credit like? And oftentimes people say, I don't have really any money, I don't have any credit, but how can I get started? And we normally talk about the whole strategy of wholesaling as your entry into the world of real estate investing. And I kind of see short-term rentals as an opportunity that creates that as well, right? And you just alluded to that when you talked about co-hosting, right? You can jump into the short-term rental game and not necessarily have a lot of money or not necessarily have a lot of credit. And one of the ways is through co-hosting and through arbitrage.
Yes.
So let's talk about arbitrage.
Okay.
Tell me, what is that, and what does that mean for the STR industry?
Oh, it has changed. I would say when I first started 4 years ago, arbitrage was really no one really knew much about it, but it's really just me coming to you and saying, hey, I see you have something for rent. Let me rent it out from you. I might pay you a few $100 extra. And really it's just up to you to say yes or no to me. And then I sign my lease with the business, of course. Well, this is not legal advice, but with the business, of course, and you get your unit.
So I'm the landlord. I have this property that I typically rent out. I'm looking for somebody to come rent it for 12 months, right? Say $1,500 a month. Okay. You're the short-term rental expert. So tell me what that conversation looks like. You come to me and say what?
People have to realize that landlords, these are their babies. Like their properties are their babies. Like their rental properties, they put a lot into them. So you have to come at them gentle. And a lot of people, whenever they're trying to get landlords to, let them do short-term rentals, they always come and talk about their business and themselves. Like, hi, my name is Kierra. I run this business. I was wondering if you can't do that. It's annoying to the people. So what I always tell my students and clients to do is like, when you walk into the room or you're on the phone with that landlord, you need to just be like, treat them like a human. Like build the rapport. How you doing? Like, let's laugh a little bit. Then ask some questions about the property to qualify, make sure it's the right property. And after you ask those questions, then you can move into first make sure your questions are related to whatever you're trying to do in a way. So for example, if you know that you want your your guests to have a fitness center because you host trainers coming into town, then that's one of the questions you could ask, just so that they could show their expertise or whatever the case may be. If it's at an apartment complex. But yeah, I just come to you, and then eventually I get to the point, the question of, do you allow corporate leases? And a corporate lease is a business lease instead. If the person doesn't know what a corporate lease is, you explain it to them so they understand it. If they do, they say yes or no. But if they do say no, you have to figure out why they said no. Like, for example, if you've explained everything and they're like, I just don't know, I'm worried about the noise. Like, what if people are so loud, my neighbors might complain. Then you have to come up with an objection to show them why you're like able to do it. So I would say, okay, there's a company called Minute, and they have noise machines, and we can put in noise machines that measures the decibels in the unit. And we will know if there's like a party, if that's what you're worried about.
As a landlord, I got the $1,500 property. You're the host. You're doing the arbitrage strategy. You come to me. You negotiate a lease with me to pay me 15, or maybe I get maybe 16, because you want to incentivize me to, in essence, allow you to rent my property and then sublet. In essence, it's like subletting, right?
Yes.
Right. And so you need my permission up front in order to, well, you should. Like some people are that taught, right?
Yeah.
So
let's make this very clear.
Right.
Make sure you have permission.
Yeah. So we go into a 12-month or 24-month, whatever type of lease arrangement. So now you, as the arbitrage host, you've acquired this property, and now what's next?
Well, there's a lot of things on the internet, but for me, what I like to do is I like to make sure all the utilities are in place first. Of course, the internet, the electricity, everything, only because especially nowadays, when it comes to electricity and internet, it always takes them like 5-10 days to come out, and it's like, I need you now. So setting that up as soon as you get the yes is important, but also making sure that your lease starts within 2 weeks of you saying yes. So I wouldn't start it immediately. For example, if today's the 28th, I wouldn't start your lease on the 1st.
Right.
Like, wait it out 2 weeks so that you can take 2 weeks to contact those companies, but also so that you can create a game plan of furnishing your unit, because every unit's different.
That's a gem right there.
Yeah. I wish more people did it. Then you furnish the property, of course. A lot of people, I was talking to a group of friends yesterday, and one of the girls told us it took her a month and a half to get her unit up, her first one. But my advice is don't let it take that long, especially for arbitrage, because you're paying rent. So, for example, if you negotiate with your landlord to get 2 weeks free or a month free, then furnish within 5 days so that you can get your house on the market. But a lot of people, when they first start, they take a month to get it up. But quick little hack, you can go on the internet and like Angie's List, TaskRabbit, and you can use different sites to find people who will basically work for the full day. They'll work for a day for $200-$300, and you just let them know, hey, I have a bunch of furniture and boxes that I'm moving in. Can you go ahead and put the furniture together, mount the TVs, put the pictures up? I'll show you how it's supposed to look. And that can save you so much time, because usually what you're doing is, as the host, you're probably running around to this store to get these kind of nails, that store to get a drill, and you don't have time to sit down and build furniture. So it's just smarter to just have someone come in and help you build that furniture.
Yeah,
Outsourcing, yeah.
So we mentioned earlier that Airbnb is just a brand, right? People, we hear that all the time. Airbnb, I want to start an Airbnb business, but it's just a brand, right?
Just a brand.
So let's talk about the platforms. What other platforms, or what platforms do you leverage to attract guests for your short-term rentals?
I am very different, and I have always only listed on Airbnb, ironically, and it's because I feel like I've just figured it out. I figured out the platform, I figured out the algorithm, I figured out what they want. But other platforms that people do list on are like Expedia, Booking.com, VRBO is a big one, HomeAway. Those are some pretty big ones. I'm using Airbnb to my advantage. So for example, you remember when Syria had like the whole thing going on and they were sending refugees because they pulled the troops out? Right. So Houston was one of the refugee cities. And a YMCA rep reached out to us, and she let us know that they were housing a family in one of our units. And instead of saying, oh, we're so happy to host you guys, I said, we're happy to host you guys, and I have some more units if y'all have any more refugees. Right. So I also create relationships when people are booking our properties. Another example is a well-known restaurant couple of them around the U.S., they have chefs that come into Houston all the time. And they come to us and they'll stay for 7 days here, 2 months there, and we just create relationships through Airbnb for marketing purposes.
Gotcha.
You gotta milk it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a lemon. Don't just take the lemon and look at it. You gotta milk it, squeeze it a little bit, and we squeeze the lemon, which is Airbnb.
You know, it's interesting because I hear different people say different things about, you develop a direct booking site and you can save so much money and it saves your guests in the long run. And I see that perspective. And of all the platforms, the only other platform I use is VRBO. And I intentionally set my prices higher on VRBO because
Right.
if I get a VRBO booking, then that makes it worth it.
Yes.
But I do believe, and this is not a plug for Airbnb, but I do believe that Airbnb has it figured out. And because of brand recognition, the marketing dollars they put into just making people aware of who they are.
I know people trash Airbnb a lot, but when you really look at it, the hosts ourselves, we pay a 3% fee to them.
Yeah.
My husband and I are also Turo hosts, which is like the Airbnb for cars.
Yeah.
But with Turo, we pay like 50% to them of what we make. So I'm not complaining. And yes, on the guest side, I think guests are at 14 to 16%. But at the same time, as long as you treat the platform correctly and follow the rules, you'll be fine. They'll protect you. I feel like I've always been protected on the app. There's a couple of scenarios where I wish they fought for me a little harder, but it happens. It's not my platform.
It's so many different directions we could take this conversation in. But I do think it's very prudent. It would be prudent of us to talk about choosing areas and how important that is. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
How do you choose your areas, and how would you suggest that a new short-term rental investor choose an area?
Okay, so when I first started Airbnb, I was a college student, and I was scared of putting a big investment like that up against. I've never made a real investment really, and I grew up in poverty, to be honest. So I was scared to lose that money that I had earned from working at one of the big 4 accounting firms.
Yeah.
So what I did is I ended up saying, okay, how can I figure out if an area is going to be good? And I don't know what it was, but my analytical mind was like, you need to look up every zip code to see how everyone's doing. So I found AirDNA, which is a company that allows you to, it's a online software that aggregates all the data in the world really for Airbnb and VRBO. And I found it, I paid for my city, in Norfolk at the time, and I ended up just going down every zip code to see if I could analyze how are my neighbors doing? How much are they making? Are they getting booked? What are people saying in the reviews? Are they liking the areas? What are they saying? So then somehow, some way, I just ended up realizing that the zip code research is important. So for new people, I recommend they do what I did. Go on sites like AirDNA, which right now is the only one of its kind. There are others, but it's the biggest right now. And go through every zip code in your city to see how much you could make a night. Well, a night and how much you'll be occupied. People forget that part. It's not about making $300 a night. If you're at 1% occupancy for the month, you ain't even get booked.
Right.
Versus if your area is at $300 and you're at 100% occupancy, you could be making, what is that? That's $30,000? That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
That's another gem, because people look, how much money can I make a night? But that percentage of the occupancy rate is amazing. So I chose to place a short-term rental unit here in this area because of its proximity to downtown. I mean, we are in the west end of Atlanta, and we are just minutes away from major attractions here in Atlanta, the Coca-Cola, the museum, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's a convenient area. And so it allowed me, I appreciate arbitrage, and I know a lot of people who do rental arbitrage, but I'm a buy and hold investor. And so I was able to purchase at a price point that made sense here and still be in great proximity to local attractions that guests are coming to be a part of. We have the living area that I just walked out of. We have an open kitchen concept here. As I said earlier, my cleaner is here. She's in the midst of flipping the property. This room looks like it's ready. The beds are made up. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property. This room, she's still working on. She's got to come back and put the sheets back on and finish her final touch-up cleaning. We have a nice large walk-in closet here, large bathroom, shower, double shower heads, and that type of thing. This is one of the things I love about the design in this property. We chose to leave this wall that was here. And so we just kind of built the new walls around it. So this original fireplace wall, this original brick stands out. And a lot of our short-term rental guests that come remark about how they like this particular feature. Here is the second bathroom that is shared with the two secondary rooms that are here. And then this is the third bedroom that is still being turned by our cleaner. There's a desk here, and in all of my properties, I try to include a desk somewhere because oftentimes when a guest reaches out to us, they'll say, hey, is there a workstation? I said earlier, a lot of times people are now looking to come stay longer term and to do work remotely. So it's important in your properties to make sure that you have a nice space, a desk or some opportunity for a person to be able to sit down and take care of business if they need to. Let's talk about regulation and how important that is, because I've seen people jump in, invest all this money, and then realize you can't even do it in that area.
You're like, ooh,
So
evicted.
talk about regulation.
Very controversial, but I personally feel like regulations are a good thing. I used to not think that. I was very green behind the ears when I first started, but I've realized now that having regulations is good. But a lot of people, like you said, get into it and they don't ask their landlord, or they have an HOA or a CA, like a COA, and they don't realize that although your neighbor said they're okay with Airbnb with that HOA and they're the president, they could change their mind next month and you will never be able to do Airbnb again, so you just lost your money.
Right.
So those are some things to look out for. But also me, for example, when I was in Virginia, I had to figure out what the laws were. So I just simply went on the government sites and I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what are people saying about it? What does the government say about it? I called city council just to make sure I was okay in the green. I was fine. Yeah. But like, people should just take that extra step to call your city council or hall council just to see what the rules are, so you're not shut down and fined thousands of dollars.
So I'm on the board of an organization here in Atlanta called AMSTRA, the Atlanta Metro Short-Term Rental Alliance. And we started the organization for reasons like this. Airbnb or short-term rentals was not regulated at all, right? And so it's a free-for-all, and everybody's got all these listings. And when Super Bowl came around, like the number of listings just like quadrupled, right? So you have all of these people, and so then the city decides, okay, we want to rein in on this, and started regulating and with the goal of pushing hosts out. I say all of that to say, in wherever your local area is, just like you call city council to say, hey, what's the deal here? It's important to reach out to those powers that be, to one, make sure that it's possible in the city, right? And if there are organizations like an AMSTRA, make sure you join those organizations and you get involved, because as changes come down the pipe, you want to be a part of that change and a part of that conversation. One of the things that I've always taught for those who acquire property, especially if you're buying a property to put on a platform, I think it's always very important to make sure that, sure, you can get $5,000 a month from a short-term rental, right? But what are my minimum expenses? Like, what does it take to run this property? And if for some reason tomorrow Airbnb disappeared, or tomorrow I couldn't put it on a short-term rental, if I had to shift strategy and make it a long-term rental, can I at least break even, right? Because you're locking yourself into a contract for X period of time, whether you arbitrage or whether you sign a 30-year mortgage. I want to ask you, what would you share? What's one piece of advice? I mean, you're giving a whole lot of advice already. But what's one piece of advice you would share, give to someone who's thinking about jumping in the industry? What do they need to do next?
Okay. Well, I would say someone who wants to jump in the industry, number one tip, don't quit your job.
Oh, I love it.
I think that would be the number one thing. I wish someone told me, like, looking back, I mean, I'm happy where I am today, don't get me wrong, but having a W-2 trumps everything in this business, because getting loans, harder for me. Interest rates, higher for me. But that would probably be my number one tip. Is I know the dream is, I'm gonna quit my job, be financially free, but hold your job until you have some great cash flowing properties that can sustain you for, years, and then look at quitting your job, because then you'll feel comfortable quitting and you won't be under that pressure if something bad happens, like Atlanta has regulation, or Atlanta decides to have regulations and you can't host anymore, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So that's my advice.
Kierra, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you for being a part of today's episode of the Property Power Play. I'm your host, Kito J Johnson, and it's right here that we empower you with the tools necessary to play the game of real estate and win.
The Convo, the two-time 2023 Telly Award-winning network, and your home for conversations around Black wealth, available on all platforms.